Thank you very much, Pat and Jocelyn and FHWA and NOCO for this opportunity for me to speak on the Nevada Department of Transportation's operational data and how we use that to mainstream our TSMO efforts. So what I'll do is I'll go through and talk about 4 different areas, how we've began with the introduction of our TSMO program plan. I'll go into some of the aspects of using that operational data in the development of our TSMO program and the strategies used for that. And then I'll elaborate a little bit more into how we use it in our implementation process, and then also how we're mainstreaming some of those efforts at the statewide level. Okay, so our TSMO program plan really officially kicked off in 2014, where we had a workshop with FHWA, kind of helped us set that stage for our statewide TSMO guidance. From that, we were able to identify some actionable items that we used to develop our overall TSMO program plan, which we officially adopted in 2020. So from that, we've identified our goals, the processes and everything that were refined, as part of that formal adoption of that program. We were able to establish our business case, showcase how those strategies contributed to addressing our transportation challenges, as we also looked at, identifying some of our long-range plans. They also align with the federal performance measures and how we report on those, and then we wanted to look at our existing business processes and procedures with that. So here's the 3 elements that we took into consideration when we were doing our TSMO program plan. Most of you are probably familiar with that, but the strategic elements, as the what and why, establish your business case for that, and your vision, your mission, your strategic goals and objectives, and then go into the how, what your programmatic elements are. Work with, coming up with those objectives and that business processes, what resources and actionable items that you can put forward with that. Establish, a core TSMO champion team and stuff like that. The next step is the tactical, is the where and when you're starting to do that for your projects and your delivery of those and the strategies associated, and hopefully establish, those funding and implementation timeframes and so forth. Next step here, I'm going to talk about how we're using that data in developing our TSMO program and those strategies. So we incorporated a 3-step process, and we recognize that importance, of developing that business case. I think that was the biggest area for us to get that buy-in from our leadership and the stakeholders, is understanding our transportation needs and challenges. So we wanted to demonstrate that role through the TSMO program and how it contributes on a statewide transportation level, and get that into our long-range plans. So we went through this 3-step process. And the first one, we kind of wanted to identify, there was like 8 major transportation challenges in categories that includes the population and the growth, your congestion, the safety, the vehicle miles traveled. The state of Nevada is a tourism-based economy. You also want to look at things that associate back to your MAP 21 and your FAST budgets, that your deficiency in your roads and your bridges. Also recognize what is it in your state, trucks and the freight and the movement, and also one key area too is your asset management. So as we start looking at those challenges, you want to look further into what are those operational data things that can relate back to those specific challenges, and what the goal is to clearly and accurately communicate that back so that you can get those improvements put forward. The next step you want to look at is identify those needs on that operational data analysis. For each of those challenges in those categories, you want to make sure you address those, and then come up with how you can tie those directly back to some applicable TSMO strategies. And then, of course, the final step is to discuss those benefits and identify some of those specific TSMO strategies, along with the supporting operational data, to demonstrate how that contributes to the overall outcome in this with those specific challenges. In the following slides, I'm going to kind of show you some of those business case opportunities that we addressed. In this one here, we're specifically looking at congestion and the associated costs. In this case here, you can realize that with the state of Nevada, there was about a $1,400 and 60-hour related associated cost to everybody due to congestion on our Nevada roads. So that overall budget cost is a $1.6 billion in lost time and fuel just to the state of Nevada. So once you identify that, and then that's the need, what are some of the contributions that you're going to do to help use a TSMO strategy? In this case, what we did is we used artificial intelligence to go out there and use some real-time predictive analytics to identify some of those high-risk areas and then get some of that first responder community to help, with the Department of Transportation and our partners to get out there and do some of those early action incident response times. Same thing with the vehicle miles traveled. We recognize the fact that the state of Nevada was significantly growing at that time, and the increase in that and what that does to the vehicle miles traveled. So we also look at the contributions not only just from the state of Nevada, but what other states are doing. So that's part of our research and looking into that and how they contributed to those solutions. In this next slide, I'm looking at our deficient roads and bridges with our business case, and we recognized that there's going to be a major shortfall with to the roads and bridges within the state of Nevada. On average, we're going to see about $24 million deficit due to that shortfall, and that's significant. When you look at it overall to the whole Nevada motorists, it was about $3.2 billion, and that was in 2020. So the next thing that we're doing with this too is we're going to update this and make it more current and accurate again. Some of the strategies that we did and what we recognized here as our part step 3 is to implement some of those low dollar cost solutions. And in this case, it was in a congested area and the interchanges down in southern Nevada, so we included a striping improvement. It was roughly $800,000, which is a lot lower cost than it was to completely rebuild that interchange. Safety improvements, the same thing. When you look at your fatals on your roadways, how can you improve some of that? And what's that economic cost to the users? And you relate that back, it's very tangible. So one of our solutions is our Traffic Incident Management Coalition. It's a really significant improvement for us in the state of Nevada. We have 6 coalitions. We're looking to expand upon that. And we've established new open roads policies to where we got both our governor, our directors of the state of Nevada for the Department of Transportation, and our Department of Public Safety to ensure that we're out there doing those quick, safe clearances. In addition, I want to look at how we're also using the data and developing some of our program plans, tactical elements. So currently what we're doing is using a lot of information with travel time reliability, and that's sources through the NRICS with your NPMRDS data set. And also I was talking earlier on some of those things with the incident response time. So it's our incident management software and how we can get out there and have earlier response times and quicker safe clearances as well. Some of our future actions are to take into consideration what are you doing with some of the other data sources. We want to include, real-time information from your weather data sources, all of that incident data, how you can include that with maybe some of your other applications with your ATMS, and some other strategies that we've also looked at, and we've also incorporated ATM. Here's an example of utilizing the NPMRDS data set. So this is a project where it was one of the largest in the state of Nevada. It was in southern Nevada, and it was called Project Neon. And this is the before data. So you can see in the travel time on this segment of roadway, and it's a short segment, but it's very congested. The average annual daily traffic in this area in 2016 is roughly about 280,000. But you can see for this short segment, the travel time is roughly about 7 minutes. And the average speed through that segment is 25 with a posted of 65. However, with your performance measure, your travel time reliability score, it's in the good category. But what I want to show you next is the after. This is when we came back and we implemented the ATM strategy. And you can see in that same segment, the travel time reduced significantly for that short segment. You can see an improvement in that speed, which relates back to that. But your reliability score has slightly went south, and the reason being is just in that 3-year period there was an increase in that volume significantly of about an 8% overall increase, so pushing near the neighborhood of 300,000. And I'll show you the comparison of the two. So here's the comparison of the two when you use that data, and you can see how that growth just due to the volume, but you can see the improvement in the throughput and then that travel time, and then also the improvement of that speed through that corridor. The next slide I'm showing you here, whoops, there we go, is a heat map that we're using for the same thing for our travel time reliability. So we're breaking it down with our NPM-RDS data sets and looking at these with that reliability score, and you can see where maybe these segments can use some further improvements, and where it's in the red categories, and what are those improvements that we can hopefully incorporate some of those TSMO strategies, and why is that segment breaking down? You know, so this is some of the future things that we're looking at and how we can incorporate that into our overall process improvements and also into the One Nevada plan, and figure out what kind of strategies that you can include to improve on in that area. The next segment I'm going to be talking about, you know, the data that goes into the implementation process. And this one here is what we call our investment prioritization tool. This is one of them that we developed as part of our framework into the TSMO program. It was actually recognized NOCO last year as a runner-up in the project selection and prioritization category, and it aligns with all of our goals and objectives. So in there, you know, we're looking at everything to improve the safety, the reliability, foster that sustainability, how you can preserve your infrastructure, all of those goals to tie into the overall One Nevada plan too. And then you also look at your risks and your dependencies, and then also your implementation period on how you're going to get that out there too. So then also, what does that benefit cost? And then also want to make sure that you consider, you know, what is the prioritization from the higher level as well. Next up, I'm going to talk about how we're going to mainstream that at the statewide level. So this is more into our asset management program here. What we're currently doing is a life cycle costing tool. This here is based on the manufacturer's recommendations of that condition of those assets, and you want to establish some of those metrics based on that. So we're looking at the condition of each of those devices. This aligns within our transportation asset management plan. So we did not just only our bridges and pavements, we wanted to include other elements such as our ITS. So here's from a good, low, medium, all the way down to the high risk, and the percentage of each of those based on that manufacturer's recommendation. In addition, you want to kind of look at the life cycle of those and when you're going to go out and perform the maintenance on those. So is it going to be the repair all the way up to a fully replacement of that asset? We gave it some basic definitions through that life cycle analysis. So you went from an inspection, which was routine, minor, to go out there and perform some on-site evaluations, major repairs where you can typically go out there and hopefully bring it back into the maintenance shop and do some of those repairs, and sometimes it might involve a full replacement of that or some of those key components. And then of course there's a replacement where there's complete removal and replacement of that device. This here is what we've developed is our life cycle costing tool. It's a 10-year investment model. We're currently using this as also part of our legislative budget prep that ties into an agreement with our partner in Southern Nevada. So this is helping us move a lot of that performance side of everything tied to the assets and how you're going to move forward with that. And you can see there's a cost associated to each of these over that 10-year and what that overall annual maintenance budget would be. To break it down a little bit further, here's an example of just DMS signs, and then looking at the preservation scenario versus the worst first deterioration model, you can see there's a significant difference in those costs over that 10-year period. So if you just did your maintenance from your minors, your inspections, all the way up into your replacements through that 10-year, it's about a $5.9 million cost, versus going out there and doing the worst first and do the replacement. You can see within about year 3, you're going to be spending about $12.3 million, and overall in that 10-year period about 14.7. Here's another look at it from a model from the deterioration side of it. And like I was talking earlier, if you maintain, just your inspections, you go through this cycle and that 51% life target, it would cost that $5+ million versus if you came in the worst first and you'd be spending that 12.8, and then over here again at the 10-year you're getting close to spending that same amount of money again. Some other things that we're looking at and mainstreaming at the statewide level, some of the outcomes and learnings and benefits of using this tool. We've learned that it's a really enhancement in our collaboration. It looks at how you can also look at your workforce development, the business processes and how that was improved, the operations and maintenance, the improvements associated with that, how it created a better culture with advancing the TSMO, and of course your asset management and the performance measures and the improvements associated with that. Currently, I was looking at our staffing and workforce development plan right here. So this is within our own division. So we recognize that we needed support. And a lot of this is within our TSMO arena and the culture associated with that. So we recognize there's 5 areas that would really help us advance our TSMO program. And that's, just looking at other state of the practices, what are some of our existing conditions. We're going to include some training, how we go forward with this request and recruit for this type of staff. And this is currently a thing that we're doing because fortunately it is part of our budget prep as well. So this is going to help us align with our capability maturity model where we want to achieve a target level 3. And that is the end of my presentation. And I thank you guys very much for this.